Today we're working on something old, something modern, and a unique new asset pack that combines the two, while also doing some fun terrain changes. So if you're excited about this new chapter of Zeeburg, hit the like button and let's dive in. Alright, so it is a slightly foggy, overcast, but otherwise beautiful sunny day here in Zeeburg, and we're gonna kick off with some changes to Oldtown. This is of course the district where it all began, and it's been getting progressively more detailed as the city has progressed and grown in scale. And I think it's time for another makeover, more specifically the waterfront and some of these keys here. It just looks... yeah, it looks a little rough around the edges, and I'm pretty confident with just a few minutes and some quick changes, it's going to look a lot more realistic and natural. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of some of these vanilla pavement streets here. They just, kind of look a little chunky, a little bulky, so we're gonna rid ourselves of some of them. I don't mind this segment here because this is kind of the entrance to this old port area. I am patiently waiting for like an old Freemaster sailing ship prop to place in here. But over here it definitely looks super odd. So I'm just gonna do a bit of terraforming so that I can get rid of these, but still retain the overall shape of the star fort. And yes, I'm gonna also get rid of the old watchtower here and maybe in a few other places. Not everywhere though. Once again, I do like them at the entrance to the old harbor. And I think this setup looks interesting as well, although this bridge is probably a little redundant. We all know I have a tendency to build too many bridges. And I think in these cases, I'm gonna get rid of these two as well, but I don't mind keeping the older watchtowers in place on either end of this really old section of Oldtown. And I already think visually that this was a very welcome change. We're gonna replace the pedestrian street with a regular vanilla path, which we can then also connect up to these parks in a more seamless way. But before we do that, I've gotta do a bit more in terms of terraforming. Because I don't like the fact that this is like a hard keyed off area. I'd rather have just maybe just a bit of a shoreline here where we can have some trees and whatnot placed alongside it, so it's allowed to be kind of overgrown, but also create like a bit of a natural buffer next to the water. Oh, it's dangerous trying to eyeball this, but here we go. That's pretty good, but if you've got a keen eyesight and you've got a bit of OCD, I am sorry in advance. Although now we can make the quick seamless connections between the park and the outermost path here. Oh my, wow. Yeah, okay, so you don't need a keen eyesight to see how that was all wrong. So I think I'm gonna try something a little more simple. Before we dive into spamming a ton of bushes and nice looking trees alongside the new waterfront, I'd like to do a bit of surface work alongside these pedestrian streets, so I think I'm going to unkey them before I do so, because I find that having the keyed segments in place is going to make the precision work with the surfaces a little more difficult because of the underlying terrain. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's just a little easier if it's not keyed off. So I just want to grab something that is pretty striking, really. I might go for the Dutch pavement red, but with the replace mode from the area bucket tool, it really doesn't matter which specific surface we utilize. I just know I kind of want to make something here that looks a little more interesting and unique. Just a few custom surfaces make a ton of difference, which really shouldn't surprise me anymore, but sometimes it kind of does. Now I'm hopeful that I can be a little lazy now with the area bucket tool and then add the same surface to some of these pedestrian paths. It's a little sloppy, there's going to be some overlapping and whatnot, and yeah, some rough edges around the place. But overall, that seems to work just fine. Just fine for what I need at the very least. And then we'll get to the trees and bushes, and I'm fairly confident that those two minor changes are going to make such a massive difference for the look and feel of this area. I mean, I already feel it looks a ton better. In terms of the trees, bushes, and now grass, we've got some cool custom options from PDX Mods. So this grass here is really nice. It's made by Pidelmo, so you'll know it kind of has that quality approval stamp already on it. But it's not terrain conforming. Maybe it is a little bit, but not too much at least. So what I think we're gonna do is we're gonna try to drop the elevation by 0.3, I think. This should allow us to kind of spam this one, not with Anarchy on though, and just kind of make that the first layer of growth we'll have alongside this waterfront. Might actually be just a little more terrain conforming than I initially thought, but otherwise I think it looks really nice. So now it's time for a few bushes. We're just going for the good regular 02 and 01, maybe adding the cultivated 03 as well. And then once again dropping by 0.2 I think, and disabling the elderly size, because I think the 02 bush turns into like almost a small tree at that point. Or at that size. You can kind of see the big ones pop up still. And I don't want something too massive here, because we are going to add Pidelmo's leafy tree to this entire area as well. I'll choose the two biggest sizes for the leafy tree, and I think I'm just going to manually place these with Anarchy on, so that I have just a bit more control of where I want a really thick coverage. So while I am patiently waiting for that massive sailboat prop, we do have other boat props we could use. So I think for just a tiny bit of detailing of the old harbor part here, adding a few quays and a few boats is probably not a bad idea. So, or sorry, piers, not quays. So I'm gonna try to add a few of these, and I don't want to make a direct connection to any of the quays here, because I think that is going to potentially cause some issues with some nodes getting all tangled up. So what I'm gonna attempt to do instead is just kind of map it out manually, and then align it to the existing key network, and then just lowering it, and hopefully this is not gonna cause any issues. Then I'll grab the 3 nodes. I'm just gonna Control H to this one just to make sure that they're like the right size. And oh, no, look at that. We've got an automatic connection over here. That's not gonna work. Lesson learned, I will be adjusting the height of the pier before I try to manually move in the nodes here. It even has the benches in place. That's perfect. Now we just need a few boats. A quick word of caution if you're using this floating boat pack. I have been led to know that they have an obscene number of triangles. So if you're looking to maximize performance, or you have a lower end system, you might not want to utilize these. Oh, that's a nice addition. Let's just see if we can get a nice little early morning shot of these. Oh, that's nice. We've got all the modern cityscapes in the background, all the old stuff here in the foreground. Lots of new boats, lots of new surfaces. I think the final wrap up might be the final wrap-up, would be utilizing a mud surface of some sort in here, just to kind of make it look, well, more muddy. I think that's a little more like it. The reason I moved the surface all the way out here is that on deeper waters, the transition from the surface to the base texture I use is just a little less harsh. So I think that works out a little better. You can still kind of see it, but that's also because this part of the Zeeburg waters is pretty shallow. Oh, I feel like that turned out really nice. Huge fan of these changes. That extra bit of detailing really added a ton of character to this overall area. An area that was kind of forgotten, to be honest, and there are still pockets within the old town that needs a bit of a refresher. But I think for now, with all that detailing done, it's time to do something that feels a little more functional, because I think we need to at least attempt to satisfy some of the very high residential demand we have throughout the city. And some of you were quick to suggest that we dedicate some of the space alongside the highway stretches here to some cheap, freshly available public housing. And I do think I have just the right asset for it. So let's start with this lot right here on the outer edges of Neuville. We're gonna need some surface parking here, so I'm gonna map that out at first. We could place the buildings at first as well, so that kind of just depends on how you like to kind of approach this. So I think I'm gonna grab the one lane, one way angled parking road. We're gonna select ground mode and a constant slope. No snapping on, and I think we're gonna do some relatively straight segments here alongside the highway. I imagine this would be a little cheaper than trying to implement a full-on curve throughout the entire stretch. So something like this. And then we'll need a good bend here, and I'm not necessarily going to use this specific road type for the bendy bits. That kind of depends on whether we're experiencing any weird clipping with some of the parking here. I think alternatively it might look fun if we kind of change that to the perpendicular parking version. That might just work out a little better. So let's try to add that for the bendy bits, and then I think this particular segment could probably do with maybe just a regular 2-lane road upgrade here. So we've got a couple of dedicated turning lanes. And I do think this highway segment here is very much a temporary thing. We're gonna change much of this area in this episode, so I don't plan on having that stick around. On this end, we'll just feed into it with a regular 1-lane, 1-way road. We might as well just connect to the existing interchange here at a 90-degree angle. The primary asset we'll be using is this EU mid-rise apartment, which is just a reconfiguration of the base game college dormitory module. Very, very creative asset repurposing at play here, and it kind of has an interesting tiered roof layout. So I'm hopeful that I can kind of squeeze in a couple of these and then see if I can like maybe connect these two segments up so that it looks like one long seamless building. It's worth a shot, I think, because I think that's gonna look more interesting. And obviously, in terms of functionality, it's going to really up the density of this development. And if I can just get an additional segment squeezed in here, I think that would be really cool. I'll need a uniform color scheme to really tie it all together. And I don't mind this roof coloring here. So what I think we'll do is we're going to copy this roof color and paste it to this version, and then we're gonna copy paste this version throughout. It even comes with a custom surface and a few hedges, a few benches and props, which is perfect. It means that we have to do very little detailing to make this look nice. To make it even easier to work with, I think we're just gonna standardize the elevation to the same fixed level. Maybe this node here should be fine. Something like this. And then I do imagine that a tiny bit of surface work, like just expanding on the existing surfaces here in a really simple fashion, like a straight 180 or 90 degree angle out to the road is gonna do a lot of difference in just making this area look nice. Now that really ate into our current demand, but then again these contain 120 apartments each for a total of 480, which is really significant, and we're not quite finished yet. I want to duplicate sort of this design on this other side of the highway as well, so that we can get even more of this squeezed in. And I do love this transition from some of the older stuff into this newer or slightly more modern public housing. I imagine this being at the earliest from the 50s, so I think this development probably predates it by 50 or 60 years, and we can imagine something else was here before. But that's very much the case with all of the available land alongside this highway corridor here, and the same is the case for Hoch Park, the recently developed commercial and office district. Alright, so I did a bit of quick light detailing to this area, nothing fancy, and then I just focused on adding the amenities, which I think you'll frequently find in these mass planned public housing projects. So the crematorium is more a city-wide need, not so much a specific need for this area. But otherwise I added the Chinese-themed elementary school. I added this prop commercial building to kind of hide the Chinese lettering, because they wouldn't fit perfectly in Zeeburg, let's be honest. And then just a quick park, a quick basketball court, and a skate park. And then once again just utilizing some vanilla pavement paths and some oak trees to, at least from a distance, add that bit of realism and detail from afar. Now you might have noticed that about halfway through this build I quickly paused the game. Reason being that as this population boom was starting to take shape, I could kinda sense the writing on the wall. Traffic is starting to get pretty terrible, and the main issue is that the current configuration here just isn't built to handle high density areas at this highway corridor, especially since this highway is actually an outside connection. And the most immediate or obvious ramp you take is this single lane ramp to this intersection, where you then try to desperately make a left to feed into this area. So I think we need to commit to a few upgrades. Now I think the obvious approach would be to build a couple of on and off ramps to a segment about here, so that we can easily feed into this main arterial, and thereby allowing people to bypass this otherwise busy segment. But before we do that, we're going to do something else entirely, which is going to involve a ton of terraforming, because I get a ton of awesome feedback and cool suggestions from all of you. and if you're a subscriber, you'll know that they pretty frequently make their ways into my builds. And in this particular case, I want to highlight a comment from Lucas, which pretty much completely changed what I had initially imagined for this entire area. Lucas suggests that this water inlet here turn into a natural reserve or marshland of sorts. And I think it would be really cool to kind of turn this entire tract of land into just that, a very heavily forested marshland. It's going to really break up the developed area of Zeeburg, which you'll know from East Haven. I love to add waters and other geographical features to kind of make boundaries between all the urban environments. But it's also going to turn much of this beach into this long, narrow peninsula, which I think is going to be a super cool look. So I think I'm going to map out some of this marshland before altering any of the highway developments here. And then we'll try to kind of retrofit any highway changes afterwards. That's probably going to look more organic. I'm probably gonna cheat and do some terraforming while building the highway, but you get the main idea, I think. So I'm just gonna kick off this process by doing a bit of basic terraforming, because I don't want the ground level to be more than like few meters above the water level, because otherwise it's gonna be a little tricky to get some actual marshland going. And this is, as you can see, 3 meters, which is just fine. And I think I'm gonna continue it all the way in here next to Zugwald, because we might be able to make a direct connection to this lake as well. I am a little worried about the sea level or the height. -14, how's the shoreline looking? 1 meter. It might cause issues. We'll see. We'll need a bit of terraforming at first, that's for sure. The best way to achieve the main marshland setup is probably just utilizing the level terrain tool with a pretty small brush size, but also a pretty low brush strength, and then pretty much just take my time with it. So I think the level -7 is probably a bit too much. I'm gonna go for -5. It should create this kind of light water texture where you can pretty much see the bottom of the marshland at all times. Yeah, I mean, I could act all surprised by how this planned time-lapse kind of just spun out of control, but by this point, I'm not gonna fool anyone. It happens so frequently. So I'm gonna take a little tour of everything we've been doing instead, so that you guys are like up to speed. I think the Marshland turned out fairly well. It's probably not shallow enough, but it's a minor thing, and I think in general, as we zoom out, it looks pretty good. And more importantly, it just kind of breaks up the further expansion of the city. This might be the like northern end of the inner city area, so we might actually dive into some lower densities as we move beyond this natural feature. Beyond that, I kept things pretty simple in here. Yeah, this is my spontaneous, very contemporary, modern office building, combining 6 or 7 commercial buildings, and I actually think the design turned out fairly well. Then just a tiny bit of detailing with some quick surface work up here and a few boats. More contemporary stuff in this wonderful asset I just grabbed off PDX mods. I chose to combine 2 of them just to make it even more unique, and I think it worked out. So that's the planned stuff, I guess, and then things kind of got out of hand over here. A very spontaneous decision to just move the tram depot all of a sudden. I think my logic was that as the city has grown, especially the district of Neuville, it just kind of felt like this plot of land would require a bit higher densities, maybe parts of the older fabric of the city, instead of being a pretty low density area where a lot of the like available land would be utilized for a massive tram depot. I mean, even this location might be a little too central. So I kind of like the shake up here a little bit more, and we've got a bit of extra space here as well, which is always fun. And I am planning to continue this densification process, moving a little further into the inner city area. I think there's a couple of places here in Alexandria and the modern station district that could use a bit of a revamp, because this is very close to the historic core and what most people would refer to as the proper downtown of Zeeburg. But the utilization of park space as well as this massive hospital just kind of brings the overall density down. And when you combine that with buildings that aren't super dense either and the overall width of this street, it's almost got like a suburban character. Now I can count myself super lucky that we just got a couple of additional wonderful content creator packs. And the Office pack by Titan in particular feels like it's almost tailored to this specific area. So we're gonna utilize some of those assets to bring a super unique mix of old and new to Alexandria, something I've already tried to mimic with the assets I had available up until now. And this is really gonna help densify this area, but I think the first thing we'll need to do is get rid of the parks here and relocate the hospital. With the wonderful recreational park landscape now all gone, I think the hospital might just be relocated to the empty lot we just made available here in Livonia by relocating the tram depot. It's gonna be a bit of a squeeze, but I think if we just disable some snapping, utilize better bulldozer a bit, just to get rid of some of the hedges here, which I don't think are all that necessary. And then most importantly, we downgrade, I should say, the dual lane road here to this single lane parking enabled one. I think we're just about gonna make it. I think overall this just feels like a slightly more fitting location. It ties a little better into the 60s and 70s public housing here in Wilhelmspark. And most importantly, it's giving us plenty of opportunity of just densifying this part of Alexandria, which I hope is going to make the transition to the very modern, redeveloped part of town here that may or may not have seen a few bombs during the World War a little better. So a better tie into this modern contemporary stuff. And this very transition is exactly why I think the Office Evolution Pack was almost tailored to the city, and more specifically this area. Because looking at some of these assets, like the main architectural vision here is a combination of new and old. Some of them are quite literally very modern, high-tech, contemporary additions to what looks to be old original architecture, which is perfect. We're not gonna start with these empty lots though, because I've got a few densification projects on some of the already established blocks here in Alexandria. So I think for one, the Zeeburg police headquarters could use an upgrade, not because we specifically need it, crime isn't all that bad, but just because it makes this block overall more dense. And then I think I'm finally going to get rid of this stuff. I added these as sort of like fun breaks in what is otherwise very beautiful development, because realistically you will have some of this squeezed in, but on such a prominent corner, yeah, it just kind of stuck out. So I think some of you will be happy with that decision, and now it's been made. And I think the asset we just had on our hands, this one, might just be perfect for this location, because it is also going to function as a corner lot. So let's just try to get that placed and see how that ties in. I mean, that's just amazing work. I've known for years just how talented Titan is, but yeah, this feels like next level, especially in terms of like the creativity, just envisioning that this is what I want to build as an asset. It's just incredible stuff. We're just getting started though, because I think the addition of the extension to the police station has certainly helped with the densification, but I'm gonna be a little cheeky and just kind of squeeze one of these other wonderful office evolution assets in here, and doesn't seem like it's causing any pathfinding issues. And this could look like a police headquarters as well. Ironically, a law and accounting firm moved in, but yeah, I guess it kind of adds up. This one is just another amazing one. Kind of clips into some of the stuff back here, but it's really not too bad. And this overall block has just been made much more dense now, which I just think is a better fit given the very desirable high traffic location. If we have a look at the opposite corner, which currently houses the Holy Church of Our Sacred Lady, as I've named it, and this old historical building, I'm kind of tempted to add something here as well. It is gonna mess with the symmetry just a little bit, but I guess we've already got the underground bicycle parking hall to kind of mess that up in the first place. So what I might want to do is once again see if I can grab something from the Office Evolution pack. This time around it can't be 6 tiles deep, more like 4 I think. And I want something where the old structure is very obvious. And I think it might just be this one. So this is a very modern, daring addition to what used to be a pretty beautiful old building. We can kind of see the base here in play. So yeah, definitely some visionary city council approval processes. I'm kind of trying to defend myself here already, but I actually do like that choice, and I'm not sure the Holy Church should be like all this symmetrical to the intersection anyways. I might kind of change the location of it, but I kind of think this works. I think the red brick facade here ties in pretty nicely with the signature building and the roof tiling of the church. As an added benefit, this is obviously adding high-paying workplaces to the city, which we desperately need. And once again, I know I don't have any visible office demand, but I'm pretty sure I'm encountering this weird software production office box, so I actually do have demand for it. I just really can't see it on my bars here. Now, I've just got 2 additional changes to make here in Alexandria to a few of the structures and the road layout before I start filling in these empty lots here. And the first one is going to be the demolition of these 2 stitched together activity plazas. They provide a total of 50 jobs, and I mean, if it was 500, I might be able to justify the location. But this is just too much nice real estate, which I think I'm going to develop into like a mix of new and old. And then the final thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this 6-lane segment and I'll be downgrading this 8-lane segment to match. Because I just don't need all that many lanes at this point in time in this area. This is meant to eventually handle a ton of traffic as the city continues to grow, specifically grows in this southern direction. But since that hasn't happened quite yet, this is all just a little empty. And 8 lanes is probably a little too much future-proofing. So with those final changes in place, let's develop a few of these blocks. Well, this was a lot of fun. I think it's one thing being able to transition from an old to a modern district by just increasing the frequency of modern buildings, but to actually be able to place some buildings that combine the old with the new just kind of adds a new layer entirely to this transition. And I think the overall densification of Alexandria is also just a great shake-up compared to how it previously looked. Now this also means that the modern train station is starting to kind of stick out a little bit, not in its architecture, but in the like the overall scale of it. I'm a big fan of this idea of having 2 major train stations within the city. I feel it's a fun, unique mechanic. It's not too unrealistic either. But this station is just massive. It kind of cuts off this part of the city. So we may need to revise this in the near future. So yeah, by now it's no secret that I absolutely love this new Office Evolution content creator pack. But so far, we've only really utilized the zonable assets with the Plop the Growables mod. There are a couple of really nice signature buildings here, one of which I'm going to place based on the result of the recent vote, where thousands of you guys voted yes to finally let a building surpass the previous tallest structure, which is the historic Zeeburg Cathedral. And I feel like this is kind of a big deal, because the towers you can see there in the distance, they don't eclipse the cathedral. One of them, the dark one there in the distance, is 2 meters shorter than the cathedral, just about. So this might open up new opportunities for growth, new like developer proposals. It's gonna be fun. I'm not gonna build any super talls in the city though, because I just don't like the scale of them. And I'm happy to say that despite lots of you voting no to this suggestion, more than 40% in fact, it was a pretty close vote. The actual asset will be utilizing the base J98 Plaza from this Office Evolution pack. It looks amazing. I mean, it is just a striking asset. But enough talking, let's get it placed so that you can kind of see it in the flesh. One of the really cool things here is that, much like the rest of this pack's theme, it is the integration. It is integrated, rather, sorry, with like an old structure that like initially stood here. So we'll imagine this being the, I don't know, it's kind of like a trade guild building of some sort. But I'm just gonna align it to the height of this node, I think, and we'll just take a little look. Yeah, so it's about 40 meters taller than the cathedral and much of the remaining skyline, but I don't think it's too bad. And it's only about 170 something odd meters tall in total, so we're not nearing the super tall category at all. It's a very striking design. I can only imagine the citizens of Zeeburg will have a love-hate relationship with this thing. I don't think you can have a neutral approach. But I do like it, and honestly, I'm happy it got approved, because it does provide some new opportunities in the future as well. This new development also leads me to request a bit of feedback, maybe a few suggestions from you guys. You never disappoint in that avenue. We've got some available land here. It's very, very awkward, so we can't build any cookie cutter stuff here, I imagine, but given how this building is once again a combination of something very modern with the old trade skilled building or whatever we figure out this to be, we can go in either direction. We can add something old, we can add something historic, or something modern, something super contemporary. So if you've got a suggestion, please let me know. Just be mindful that it's a pretty awkward space, but of course we can do a few alterations to the existing infrastructure if necessary. Alright, so before we wrap up this episode of Zeeburg, I just want to implement one small change that has a pretty big impact in terms of the functionality of our public transit system, more specifically the tram network covering much of Zeeburg, especially out here in Neuville. This change is based on some of your feedback, because I've got a bit of a problem with one of the custom roads I built with the road builder. So this 4-lane, a tram-enabled road has one major drawback. I can only add a tram stop on this sidewalk here, because the median isn't big enough to support one. And this effectively means that you can only get on the tram in, you know, on this side of the road, and mostly also just in one direction, unless I do some weird stuff with the actual lines. Now, when this was the only stop in Neuville and the tram would be reversing into Concordia and the rest of the city, that wasn't much of an issue, but we've now already added one additional stop out here, and we've already prepared for even more stops in the future, so this needs to change. Fortunately, with this road being so wide, I do think we have the real estate to get it all fixed up. But we'll give it a go. So with Road Builder, we're gonna select this segment and say use as template, because I don't want to change all of these segments. And then I know that I'll need to increase the median width from 2 to 5 meters to support a stop in either direction. Obviously, this means that the total width of the road is now 3 meters more than it was previously, and I guess we can kind of support it. As you can see, I have plenty of space, but I'm just gonna compensate by removing 1.5 meters from either of the sidewalks. It should look a little nicer. As you can tell, I need to just align this grassy net lane just a little bit, but otherwise this looks pretty nice. Oh yeah, the naming. Yikes. 5 meter median tram, 32 meter. Yeah, it's okay. It's gonna work. One additional change I want to make is I just want to pause the game and then get rid of some of the vanilla tram stops, because with the addition of the other new content creator pack, the City Stations pack by Bad Peanut, which is equally awesome, I just don't have use for the other stuff right now. One thing that is really cool is the addition of some new architectural tram stop shelters. And I'm definitely going to be using these throughout Zeeburg. So let's add one to the location of the previous stop. And then I think we'll add one over here. Actually, let's just center this, keep it kind of symmetrical. I'm going to add a few of these throughout the city where we have the older tram stops. It's a small change, but it makes a massive visual difference, especially on this pedestrianized road. That is really nice. Now I just need to quickly reconnect the tram line to all the new stops. Fortunately, the game will generate this waypoint node where there used to be a stop, so it's just as simple as just grabbing these and getting it all connected. And then as a final addition, I think it could be fun to just add like a visual identifier of all these stops by adding a pretty striking surface of some sort. It doesn't necessarily have to be this one, because as I complete it, you guys will see that it almost looks kind of yellow. But I need something that kind of sticks out and looks interesting. And that's actually not too bad, so I'm just gonna quickly add that to the rest of the stops. What if it had like a tactile surface of some sort for like blind people to be able to much easier identify when they're at a tram stop? I'm just thinking out loud, but that could be like a fun concept. And I think in Japan, some of the like tactile pieces of sidewalk to indicate you can cross the road are actually yellow. So maybe that could work. Otherwise, the visual change is very pleasant, so I'm happy I did that. But that is gonna be it for this chapter of Zeeburg. Thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye.